The Orion Gate had been dead for so long that most on the listening post thought of it as decoration. It hung there at the edge of the black, a massive ancient ring of stone and metal, turning slowly above the dim light of a dying star. Commander Rill had worked this post for 12 quiet years. In all that time, nothing had ever come through. The sensors mostly read background radiation, drifting debris, or the faint hum of the gate's dormant power lines. It was a peaceful place, almost boring. That peace ended in an instant. The first warning came as a deep tremor through the deck plates, like something huge pressing against reality itself. The second was the alarm, sharp, urgent, and nothing like the soft chimes of routine reports. Rill's sensor officer, a young violet-skinned Claren, snapped her head up from her console. Her voice cracked. "Sir, the gate's active." Every head on the bridge turned toward the main display. The ancient ring glowed along its inner edge, faint at first, then burning white. Energy readings climbed so fast the system struggled to track them. Rill's scales prickled with static. "That's not possible," one of the engineers muttered. "The gate's been offline for centuries." "It's possible," Rill said, trying to keep his voice steady. "And it's happening now." The wormhole formed with a soundless flash, light bending inward like water pouring into a drain. Space around the gate shimmered as if heat were warping it. But this wasn't heat. This was mass, gravity, something forcing its way through from somewhere far beyond the Council's mapped territory. "Object emerging," the sensor officer whispered. "Size, sir, it's bigger than any class we know. Much bigger." The first shape appeared in the wormhole's glow. A shadow at first, then sharp metal edges. It was dark, darker than the space around it, made of overlapping plates that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. "Scan it," Rill ordered. "We are scanning, sir." The hull's blocking every frequency. "We can't read through it." "Power signatures." The officer stopped and swallowed. "Power signatures are in stellar reactor range. Multiple cores." That got the attention of everyone on the bridge. Multiple stellar cores meant this thing wasn't just big. It was built to move, fight, or build on a scale none of them had ever seen. The ship slid free of the wormhole like a giant predator emerging from deep water. Its lines were sleek but heavy, its shape both alien and purposeful. It didn't drift or slow. It moved with absolute control, like it knew exactly where it was going and exactly what it was doing. The comms officer turned from her console, eyes wide. "Sir, they're transmitting on open council frequency, and..." She hesitated. "It's perfect council standard." Rill's spine stiffened. "Put it through." The speakers came alive with a calm, steady voice. "This is the Earth Alliance vessel Dauntless requesting diplomatic entry into council space. We come in peace." The bridge went silent. The words weren't strange, but the voice was human. Human. The species the Council only knew from rumors, old exploration reports, and distant sensor traces. The species that, according to every file Rill had read, had no ships beyond basic faster-than-light prototypes. The species no one expected to show up here, at the Orion Gate, in a ship that could rival the Council's largest war platforms. Rill leaned back in his chair, his tail curling against the deck. "Confirm that transmission," he said. "It's confirmed, sir," the comms officer replied. "The signal's clean. They've been monitoring our language protocols for years, maybe decades. They knew exactly how to talk to us." On the display, the massive dark ship rotated slowly, its name stenciled in bright white along one side in alien letters their systems translated instantly. Dauntless. Around it, smaller craft began to emerge, escort ships, each one the size of a council destroyer. They moved in perfect formation, no wasted motion, their engines burning steady blue. It was a show of discipline and power. Rill's sensor officer spoke again, voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, even one of those escorts could outgun this station." Rill's throat felt dry. This was not the first contact the Council had planned for. This was something else, something heavier. He thought of the training briefings, the rehearsals, the carefully worded speeches meant for small, hopeful ships carrying scientists and diplomats. This was a ship that could break worlds. And it was smiling. The Dauntless slowed, coming to a stop exactly where Council first contact coordinates marked the safe zone. It didn't drift, didn't adjust unnecessarily. Just stopped, perfectly, like it was part of the void itself. Rill glanced around the bridge and saw the same look on every face. Fear wrapped in curiosity. The kind of curiosity that made you want to lean closer to something dangerous, even though you knew it could kill you. His comms officer looked at him, waiting for orders. Rill took a slow breath. Open a channel. Static hissed, then cleared. A face appeared on the main screen, human, female, with sharp eyes and a calm expression that looked too controlled to be casual. This is Captain Elara Vance, she said. We bring greetings from the people of Earth and gifts for the Council. It is our hope this meeting marks the beginning of friendship. Her smile was warm, but behind it, Rill felt something else. Something dangerous and unshakable. Predators could smile too. He managed to return the greeting, his voice steady though his pulse wasn't. Welcome, Captain Vance. This is Commander Rill of the Varnari Defense Corps. The Council was not expecting you like this. Her smile deepened slightly. We wanted to make sure our arrival showed proper respect. Rill's eyes flicked back to the display of the Dauntless. Its massive engines still glowing faintly, its hull unscannable, its escorts circling like patient hunters. If this was their idea of respect, he wondered what their idea of force looked like. And in that moment, deep in his gut, he knew whatever was about to happen, the galaxy was about to change forever. The Dauntless hung there like a mountain of metal in the void, silent and perfectly still, but its presence pressed against every mind on the listening post. Commander Rill couldn't shake the feeling that the ship was watching them, studying them, even though no weapons were aimed at the station. The escorts moved in slow arcs around it, each one keeping the same exact distance from the others, their formation too perfect to be for show. The bridge crew whispered to each other in low voices, pretending to focus on their stations. Every display still showed the same thing. Power readings so high the computer kept flashing error warnings, armor composition marked as unknown, and shields strong enough to turn aside a meteor storm without a flicker. Even the way it was built made no sense. The hull plates overlapped in strange patterns, edges tilted just enough to bend sensor pulses away, as if the ship itself didn't want to be understood. The human captain's image still hovered on the main screen, her face calm, her tone polite. It was hard for Rill to reconcile her words with the shadow that loomed outside the viewport. A diplomatic carrier, she had called it, yet every line of its construction screamed warship. Commander, the sensor officer said quietly. The escorts, they're scanning us. Broad sweep, low power, almost like they're curious. Rill's claws tapped against the arm of his chair. Don't block it. Let them see what we are. He wasn't sure why he said it. Maybe because blocking would be pointless, maybe because there was nothing to hide. Their little station couldn't threaten a ship like that. Outside, the escorts drifted closer, slow and unthreatening, their weapons cold but visible. Rill's eyes followed one as it slid across the stars, so close now that the viewport made it seem they could reach out and touch it. Even without its main guns powered, it radiated the kind of danger that made his scales tighten. On the screen, Captain Elara Vance leaned forward slightly. Commander Rill, I'd like to propose an exchange. My crew and I would be honored to visit your station and meet your officers before the formal council delegation arrives. Rill hesitated. Every instinct told him it was risky, but protocol said to extend hospitality to visiting diplomats. And besides, refusing would send the wrong message. Your request is approved, he said, keeping his voice neutral. We will prepare for your arrival. Her smile was brief but genuine. Thank you, Commander. We will bring a small team. No weapons. The screen went dark. For a moment the bridge was silent except for the hum of the systems. Then the comms officer spoke. Shuttle launching from the Dauntless. For passengers, no heavy armament detected. Rill rose from his seat. I'll meet them at the airlock. The walk through the station's narrow corridors felt longer than usual. Crew members leaned out of doorways to watch him pass, eyes bright with questions they didn't dare ask. The airlock lights pulsed slowly, indicating docking alignment. Through the small round viewport, Rill saw the human shuttle approaching. It was smaller than their own transports but sleek, with no wasted curves or ornament. It locked onto the docking clamps with a soft thud, and the pressure equalization hissed through the chamber. The inner door slid open and the humans stepped through. They were tall, straight-backed, moving with a kind of relaxed alertness. Their uniforms were simple, dark with silver insignias, but the way they carried themselves said they didn't need decoration to command respect. Captain Vance was at the front, her gaze sweeping the corridor in one glance before settling on him. "Commander Rill," she said, extending her hand in a gesture he recognized from briefings. He clasped it cautiously. Her grip was firm but not crushing, her skin warm against his scales. "Welcome aboard Orion Gate Station," he said. "Thank you," she replied. Her voice had a strange quality, measured, almost musical, but layered with something he couldn't name. They walked together toward the station's central hall. The humans moved in step, scanning their surroundings without looking like they were scanning. The two at the back carried slim cases, supposedly for cultural gifts, but Rill noted how their hands stayed close to the locks. The central hall was small compared to the scale of their ship, but Captain Vance paused to admire the art panels lining the walls, carvings from every council species. "You have built something beautiful here," she said. "It's modest," Rill replied, "but it represents many worlds working together." She gave him a thoughtful look, as if weighing those words. "That is rare where we come from." Rill led them into the observation room. The far wall was one massive viewport, the Dauntless filling most of it. Even from this distance, the ship seemed alive. Lights winking in deliberate patterns, escorts gliding like sentinels. One of the humans spoke for the first time, his voice low. "You can see the defense arrays from here, can't you?" Rill glanced at him. "Defense arrays?" The man smiled faintly and pointed. "Those lines along the dorsal ridge. Planetary-scale kinetic projectors. She's got 3 sets. Rill didn't respond. He could feel the eyes of his crew on him, waiting to see how he would react. Captain Vance turned to the viewport, her reflection framed against the shadow of her ship. "Commander, I hope our presence here doesn't alarm you. The Dauntless carries weapons because in our part of space, travel without them is unwise. We've faced threats that would tear through unarmed ships in minutes." Rill nodded slowly. "The Council hasn't fought a war in 3 centuries. The worst we see are pirate raids or asteroid strikes." Her eyes softened, but there was something behind them, an unspoken memory. "We should all be so fortunate." The comms unit on Rill's belt chirped sharply. He tapped it, and a voice crackled through, tense. "Commander, the Council fleet has arrived. They're forming a perimeter around the human vessel." Vance looked at him, unreadable. "A welcome escort?" Rill's spines flattened slightly. "Not exactly." She turned back to the viewport, watching as dozens of sleek Council warships slid into position, surrounding the Dauntless in a wide net. From here, it almost looked ceremonial. Almost. "Commander," she said softly, "I think this is going to be an interesting conversation." And Rill, watching the way her gaze lingered on the growing fleet, realized she wasn't worried at all. If anything, she seemed curious. The Council fleet glittered in the dark, their hulls catching the faint light of the distant star. To anyone else, it might have looked like a beautiful display of unity. To Commander Rill, it looked like a wall of drawn blades. Each ship was sliding into place with practiced precision, weapons powered but not yet aimed. It was the kind of formation meant to keep something in, not to welcome it. Captain Vance stood at the viewport, her arms loosely folded, her expression calm. The Dauntless loomed far beyond the glass, still and silent, surrounded now by ships a fraction of its size. The escorts held their positions as if the growing wall of Council firepower didn't matter. "They're worried," Rill said at last, breaking the silence. "They're curious," Vance corrected, a faint smile touching her lips. "If they were worried, they'd have their targeting systems locked on us already." Rill turned to her, his scales shifting in mild disbelief. Commander's report will already be in the hands of the Council Defense Command. They'll have read your energy signatures. They'll know what that ship of yours can do. That's why I'm here, she said simply. To talk, not to posture. One of her officers, the tall one who had spoken in the hall earlier, stepped closer. Permission to speak freely, Captain? She nodded. This is a nervous crowd. In my opinion, sir, it would be smart to show them something friendly. Her gaze drifted back to Rill. I agree. Commander, I'd like to invite some of your officers aboard the Dauntless. Let them see who we are and what we carry. No tricks. No surprises. Rill hesitated. Every instinct told him it was dangerous to step onto a ship that could erase his station in seconds. But something in her tone, steady and deliberate, made him believe she meant it. If my superiors agree, he said carefully, I'll come myself. Good, she replied, and her smile reached her eyes this time. Bring whoever you trust. The comms unit at Rill's belt chimed again. The voice on the other end was his communications officer, her tone sharp. Commander, incoming message from the fleet flagship. Admiral Sarek wants to speak to you. Urgently. Rill excused himself and stepped into a side chamber to take the call. The screen flickered to life, showing the Admiral's broad, gold-scaled face. Sarek's tone was clipped. You've allowed them to dock? Yes, Admiral. For crew, unarmed. They've behaved within diplomatic protocol. Sarek's eyes narrowed. That ship is not a diplomatic craft. Power readings suggest multiple stellar-class reactors. Could sterilize planets, Rill. Rill's tail twitched. I know what the readings say, but if they meant to attack, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You will maintain surveillance, the Admiral ordered, and you will prepare a report on their captain's behavior. I don't like unknowns this close to Council space. When the call ended, Rill rejoined Vance and her team. She didn't ask what was said, but the slight tilt of her head told him she already guessed. A short while later, Rill, two of his senior officers, and a security detail boarded a small council shuttle. It felt almost laughable, approaching a ship like the Dauntless in something so small. As they drew near, the sheer scale of the vessel became clear. The hull stretched endlessly in all directions, every plate seamless, every angle precise. Large, shielded bays opened like the jaws of a living thing, and their shuttle was guided into one with smooth precision. Inside, the hangar was vast, clean, and strangely quiet. Rows of smaller craft rested in perfect alignment, their sleek shapes unfamiliar. Crew members moved with purpose, each in uniform, each glancing at the visitors without hostility. Vance led them through wide corridors that hummed with hidden systems. The air was fresh, carrying faint scents of greenery and something sweet. They passed an open chamber where sunlight, artificial, Rill guessed, poured over gardens of plants he didn't recognize. This is one of our arboretums, Vance explained as they walked. Long voyages are easier with living spaces. It's good for morale. They passed through a gallery filled with art, paintings, sculptures, and strange holographic displays. Some were human works. Others bore alien designs that Rill didn't recognize. Trade? He asked. Gifts, Vance said. From species we've met on our travels. Many are still friends. The tour ended on the bridge. It was smaller than Rill expected, with stations arranged in a half-circle around the captain's chair. The crew worked quietly, their movements smooth, confident. Every surface seemed designed for efficiency. No clutter, no wasted space. From here, the view of the Council fleet was striking sleek, sharp shapes surrounding them like cautious predators. They'll keep their distance until they know us better, Vance said softly. And if they never do? Rill asked. She glanced at him, her gaze steady. Then we'll still try. That's what we came for. Before he could reply, one of her bridge officers called out. Captain, incoming priority signal from our long-range scouts. Message encrypted. Direct to your console. Her eyes flickered with interest, but she gave no sign of alarm. She stepped to her chair, keyed in the command, and scanned the incoming data. For a brief second, something in her expression tightened. So fast Rill almost missed it. When she looked up again, her face was calm. "Commander, I think the next part of our conversation will be very important." Rill studied her, feeling the weight of something unsaid. He had the sense that whatever news had just reached her was going to pull the council into matters far beyond a first meeting. And deep down, he knew the real story of the humans was only just beginning. The Dauntless hung in the middle of the council fleet like a dark mountain surrounded by sharp stones. From the station, Commander Rill could see the way council ships kept their distance. Engines angled, weapons quietly ready even though they were not openly aimed. The formation looked precise and clean, but he knew it was the kind of arrangement meant for war, not ceremony. Captain Vance stood beside him on the observation deck of the Dauntless, her hands resting lightly behind her back. She watched the movements of the council ships as if studying an intricate dance. Her face was calm, but her eyes measured every shift and turn. "They are nervous," Rill said quietly. "They are careful," Vance answered. "Careful is better than foolish." On the far edge of the fleet, a larger vessel appeared, sleek and silver, its hull marked with the emblem of the Council Defense Force. Rill recognized it instantly, the flagship. His comm unit buzzed, and the voice of his station's communications officer came through, tense. "Commander, Admiral Sarek is requesting immediate link with both you and the human captain." Rill turned to Vance. "They want to speak with you directly." "Then let's not keep them waiting," she said, and they moved to the main conference room. When the screen lit up, Admiral Sarek's golden-scaled face filled the display. His voice was steady but carried a weight of suspicion. "Captain Vance of Earth, welcome to Council Space. I trust your journey was uneventful." Vance inclined her head slightly. "It was. We are pleased to finally meet your people face to face." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Your vessel's scans are concerning. The power levels, the weapon signatures, these are not the marks of a simple diplomatic craft." Vance didn't flinch. "Our ship is armed, yes, but only because our home territory is not as peaceful as yours. We encounter dangers that require more than polite conversation to survive." Sarek's tone hardened. "Dangers that require planetary-scale weapons?" Rill watched closely. The human captain's expression did not change, but her voice carried a quiet firmness. "There are machine fleets in our region that can strip the surface of a world in hours. Predators from beyond known space that hunt ships like prey. If we cannot protect ourselves, we do not survive." The Admiral was silent for a long moment, then said, "You must understand how this looks to us. Your ship is large enough to destroy entire fleets. Your escorts alone rival our heaviest cruisers. You arrive unannounced and call it diplomacy." "I understand your concern," Vance replied, "but we are here to build trust, not break it. We can share our knowledge, our technology, and our protection. We are not here to take what isn't ours." Before Sarek could respond, the tactical officer on the Dauntless spoke from across the room. "Captain, 2 more human vessels just exited the gate. Transponders identify them as Vanguard and Solstice." Rill's head snapped toward the display. The newcomers were massive, nearly as large as the Dauntless, their black hulls patterned with faint blue lines. Both moved into formation beside the flagship of their kind, their escorts fanning out smoothly. The Admiral's eyes hardened. "How many more ships are you bringing, Captain?" Vance met his gaze evenly. "These are part of our diplomatic convoy. There will be others, science ships, cultural transports, trade vessels." Sarek leaned back in his chair. "A fleet like this could overwhelm our defenses in a matter of hours." "It could," Vance admitted. "But if that were our goal, we would not be standing here having this conversation." The Admiral's voice lowered. "You expect us to believe that?" "I expect you to decide for yourself after you see who we are," Vance said. "Fear is natural when something new arrives, but fear can either build walls or build alliances." The screen went dark as the Admiral ended the transmission. Rill turned toward her. "That was bold." She gave a small shrug. It was honest. Rill looked back at the viewport, watching the three enormous human ships hold their position without a single misstep. The Council fleet still circled, but he could see the shift, hesitation mixed with curiosity. The humans were not hiding what they could do, but they also weren't using it. He thought of the Admiral's warning, of the weapon readings, of the unknown threats Captain Vance spoke of. If even half of what she claimed was true, then these ships were not just war machines. They were lifelines in a galaxy full of predators the Council had never met. But there was still the other side to it. A fleet with that kind of power could reshape the balance of the galaxy overnight. Whether that would be for better or worse, no one yet knew. The dauntless comms chimed again. A voice from the bridge said, "Captain, our long-range sensors are picking up something moving toward the gate. Multiple objects, large mass readings." Vance's expression sharpened. "Can you identify them?" "Not yet. Too far out. But they're not using Council drive signatures." She turned to Rill. "Commander, this may be the moment where you start to understand why we don't travel light." Rill felt the weight of her words sink into him as he looked at the silent, waiting warships outside. Somewhere far beyond the edge of sight, something else was coming, and it might decide very soon whether the Council would be glad the humans had arrived. Ask ChatGPT. The next few hours passed in a blur of quiet tension. The unknown objects on long-range sensors were still too far to see, but their speed was steady, and they were coming straight toward the Orion Gate. The Council fleet adjusted its position, closing the perimeter tighter around the three massive human ships. From the station, Commander Rill could feel the unease spreading through every deck. Crew members spoke in low voices, eyes flicking to the main displays as if waiting for the first sight of whatever was approaching. Inside the Dauntless, Captain Vance kept her crew calm. She walked the bridge with steady steps, asking for updates, checking the positioning of her escorts, giving no sign that the readings bothered her. Rill stood near the forward viewport watching the Council ships. They were impressive, sleek, balanced, disciplined, but next to the human vessels they looked small, almost fragile. "Your fleet doesn't seem nervous," Rill said quietly. "They're trained for worse," Vance replied. "We've learned that panic is the fastest way to lose." Rill hesitated, then asked, "How many ships do you have?" "Not just here, everywhere." Vance's gaze shifted toward the void beyond the glass. "Enough to protect what we've built. Enough to answer when someone calls for help." "That's not an answer," Rill said. She looked at him then, her eyes steady. 14,000 worlds. More than 3,000 active defense fleets. Some patrols, some stationed for emergencies. Most never fire a shot in anger, but they're there if they're needed. Rill blinked. 14,000 worlds? The entire Galactic Council held barely 2,000. He felt the scale of it pressing into his mind. "That's more than..." He stopped himself. "You control more space than all Council species combined." "We don't think of it as control," Vance said. "We think of it as keeping the lights on in a dark galaxy. Some of our colonies are small, some are just outposts. But they're all part of something bigger." The comms officer on the Dauntless turned in his chair. "Captain, incoming signal from the Vanguard. They've completed their scans of the approaching objects." "Report," Vance said. "Still too far for visuals, but the energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. No warp drive patterns, no Council beacon codes. And they're large. Each one is the size of a small moon." Rill felt a cold twist in his stomach. "How many?" The comms officer hesitated. "Dozens. Possibly over 100. Vance didn't move for a moment. Then she said, "Put the fleet on alert, but keep weapons cold until we know more." Rill turned to her. "You think they're hostile?" "I think they're coming here for a reason," she answered. "If it's peaceful, good. If it's not, you'll see why we build ships like the Dauntless." Later, in the station's council chamber, Rill relayed the numbers to Admiral Sarek and the other senior officers of the Council fleet. The room fell silent after he spoke. Even the Admiral's expression shifted from suspicion to calculation. "They are still days away," Rill said. But if their course holds, they will arrive at the gate. We don't know their intent. The Admiral's gaze moved to the human captain, who stood at the far end of the table. And you believe your fleet can stop them if necessary? Vance nodded once. If they can be stopped, yes. The Admiral studied her for a long moment. If this proves to be a threat, the Council will expect full cooperation from your people. You'll have it, she said without hesitation. That's why we're here. After the meeting, Rill walked with her through the narrow corridors of the station. If you can stop them, he said carefully, it means you have more power than any fleet in this region has ever seen. That's what scares my people. Vance glanced at him. Power isn't dangerous on its own. It's dangerous in the wrong hands. You'll have to decide if ours are the right ones. They stepped into the observation deck again, looking out over the fleets. The three human giants floated in the middle, their escorts moving in slow, measured arcs. Around them, the Council ships kept their distance, watchful and ready. Far beyond, unseen but moving closer, the unknown shapes crossed the void. Rill tried to imagine them, moon-sized, silent, and headed for their only doorway into Council space. He thought of the history lessons every officer knew, how the Council had avoided war for centuries, how they believed diplomacy could prevent anything. And for the first time, he wondered if that belief would hold. Vance broke the silence. When they arrive, there won't be time for politics. We'll have to decide, together, what we're going to do. Rill didn't answer right away. He kept his eyes on the Dauntless, its shadow vast against the starlight. It wasn't just a ship. It was a promise and a warning. Ask ChatGPT. The days that followed were slow and heavy, like the galaxy was holding its breath. The approaching objects were still far out, but every hour brought them closer. The Council fleet stayed in tight formation, their ships always moving, always adjusting as if waiting for the order to strike or flee. The three massive human vessels remained calm in the middle of it all, their escorts drifting in quiet, perfect patterns. Commander Rill spent most of his time between the station and the Dauntless. Every time he stepped aboard, he felt the strange mix of tension and control in the air. The human crew didn't pace or whisper. They worked steadily, focused, as if they'd lived through situations like this many times before. Captain Vance seemed unchanged. She gave orders in a calm voice, reviewed sensor updates, and kept the rest of the fleet informed. Her confidence was unsettling. Not arrogance, but a certainty that made it hard to imagine her losing. On the fourth day, the Council leadership requested a private meeting with her aboard the station. The chamber was small, its curved walls lined with soft lights, and the air felt tight with unspoken questions. Rill sat at the side as Admiral Sarek addressed her. Captain Vance, the Admiral began, the Council needs to know exactly what you intend to do when those ships arrive. Identify them, she said simply. If they're friendly, we talk. If they're hostile, we stop them before they reach inhabited worlds. That is a simple answer to a complicated risk, the Admiral replied. What if they are beyond even your ability to stop? Vance's gaze didn't waver. Then we fight to slow them and you evacuate whatever worlds you can. But I don't think that will be necessary. The ambassador from the Lethari, a tall, silver-skinned figure, leaned forward. Your confidence, is it because you have more ships nearby? We've seen only 3 large vessels. Are there others? Yes, Vance said without hesitation. Not close enough to arrive immediately, but close enough if we call them. If things turn bad, you won't be alone in this fight. That admission sent a ripple through the room. Rill could see the realization forming on the Council members' faces. The 3 giants at the gate were not the limit of human strength. They were just the first to arrive. The conversation turned to something unexpected. One of the counselors, a short, green-skinned Varan, asked, if we allowed limited human settlement in our border systems, what would you offer in return? Vance leaned back slightly, considering her words. Defense, technology, trade. If you allow us to establish a few colonies, they won't just serve our needs. They will be strongholds protecting every world around them. Any threat coming into Council space would have to go through us first. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. Some will see that as an offer. Others will see it as a warning. It's both, Vance said plainly. If we're allies, our power is your shield. If we're not, you'll still have to decide how to deal with us. I'd rather the choice be simple. After the meeting, Rill walked her back toward the docking bay. The corridors were quiet, the hum of the station's systems the only sound between them. You knew they would bring up settlement, Rill said. Yes, she replied. And I knew they'd hesitate, but hesitation wastes time. Once those ships out there arrive, every advantage matters. Some will say you're using this threat to push your own expansion, Rill said carefully. She glanced at him, a faint smile on her lips. And some will realize it's the best way to make sure they survive. Both can be true. When they reached the viewport, the sight was the same as before. 3 massive human ships in the middle, the Council fleet around them like a ring of steel. But beyond that, in the black distance, the faintest flicker could be seen now when the light hit right. The approaching objects. Rill felt a cold weight in his chest. They're close enough to see. Yes, Vance said quietly. And soon we'll know if they're coming to talk or to test us. Neither of them moved for a long moment. The shadowy shapes in the far dark were still only specks, but even from here they felt heavy, deliberate. Rill wasn't sure if he feared them more, or the way the human captain looked at them like she had already started planning how to take them apart. The shadows in the distance grew larger with each passing hour until they no longer looked like specks at all. By the 7th day, they were clear enough on the long-range scans to show detail, hundreds of them, each shaped like a jagged sphere of metal, their surfaces bristling with towers and spines. They did not drift like ordinary ships. They moved in perfect unison, every turn exact, every burn identical. No signal came from them, no greeting, no broadcast, nothing. On the dauntless bridge, the air was steady but tight. Commander Rill stood near Captain Vance as the image of the incoming fleet filled the main display. Council ships adjusted their positions again, weapons now active, shields raised to full. Around them, the 3 massive human vessels seemed almost calm, their escorts sliding into a protective web. Distance? Vance asked. 6 hours to the gate, her sensor officer replied. Rill's tail shifted uneasily. If they came from outside our galaxy, what do they want here? Vance's eyes stayed fixed on the display. If they came this far without speaking, it's not to exchange gifts. The Council's secure channel buzzed to life. Admiral Sarek's voice carried over the comms, clipped and urgent. Captain Vance, the Council is authorizing you to take command of all forces for this engagement. We've never fought an enemy of this size. If you have tactics for dealing with them, we'll follow your lead. Rill looked at her, startled. The Admiral had gone from suspicion to trust in one sentence. Vance gave a single nod. Acknowledged. All ships, prepare for coordinated maneuvering. Humans and Council vessels will hold position until we confirm hostile intent. Escorts spread formation to protect the flanks. Hours slid by in the measured rhythm of readiness. The unknown fleet entered the outer perimeter of the system. Still no signal. They're powering weapons, the dauntless tactical officer said suddenly. Which weapons? Vance asked. All of them. That was enough. All ships, defensive posture. Target locks only, hold fire until fired upon. It happened fast. The first barrage from the alien fleet was silent in the void, but the displays lit up in warning. Dozens of bright impacts slammed into the outer ring of Council ships, shields flashing under the strain. One destroyer's light winked out on the sensors. Return fire, Vance ordered. The Dauntless and her sister ships unleashed a storm of energy. Where Council weapons flared and sparked against the alien hulls, the human volleys punched through, tearing chunks away from the strange metal spheres. Several broke formation, spinning away like crippled animals. Council ships, follow our targeting data, Vance said. Concentrate fire on the damaged ones. Do not waste shots on full shields. Rill watched the display shift as the Council vessels moved like they had never moved before, striking with precision under the human's direction. One alien sphere erupted in a bloom of light and shattered. Another split into two halves, drifting apart. The fight was brutal but controlled. The human ships moved with deliberate grace, absorbing blows that would have crippled smaller vessels, their shields holding steady under the barrage. Within an hour, the alien formation began to falter. Those still intact pulled back in unison, retreating toward the darkness beyond the system. "Pursuit?" the tactical officer asked. "No," Vance said firmly. "Let them go. We've shown them this space is defended. Chasing them might pull us into their territory without knowing what's waiting." Silence returned to the bridge except for the hum of the systems. Rill realized his claws were gripping the railing, and he forced himself to relax. The comms lit with the Admiral's voice again. "Captain Vance, you've just saved more than the gate. You've saved the Council itself." Vance didn't smile, but her voice was steady. "We saved it together." Later, back on the station, the Council chamber was full. Representatives from every member world stood to speak. One by one, they thanked the humans, some with genuine warmth, others with the stiff formality of those not ready to admit they had been wrong. When it was over, Admiral Sarek stood and addressed the entire room. "The Council votes to grant the Earth Alliance settlement rights in our border regions. These colonies will act as our shared defense, a promise that we will face future threats together." The vote passed without a single voice against. That evening, Rill stood with Vance on the observation deck. Outside, Council and human ships floated side by side, repairing damage, trading crews for aid and supply. The wreckage of the enemy fleet drifted far out in the void, slowly fading into the distance. "You've changed everything," Rill said quietly. Vance's gaze stayed on the stars. "So have you. You let us fight beside you. That matters more than you think." Rill studied her for a moment. "Do you think they'll come back?" "Yes," she said. "And next time they might bring more. But next time we'll be ready, and we'll be ready together." The Dauntless hung in the starlight beyond the glass. No longer just a shadow of threat, but a symbol of something new. Not human space, not Council space, something greater, built from both. And for the first time since the Orion Gate had awakened, Rill felt that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy would survive what was coming.